Welcome back to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friends. And if you're new to our show, welcome. This is where we talk about what it really takes to make the transition from a corporate leader to an entrepreneur, specifically in coaching, consulting, fractional leadership, or any service based businesses. And what we don't talk about enough are not the hard skills that you're bringing to the table, but the whole recalibration of your identity, your values, how you're showing up. And my guest today is Farya Barlas. She's a licensed psychologist and the founder and CEO of Farya Barlas Limited, a psychology led business growth company working at the intersection of psychology and entrepreneurship. She's the creator of The Method, a proprietary framework designed to rebuild the internal architecture of success for high achieving professionals and founders. She's also the host of the podcast From Trauma to CEO, where she leads the conversation on how trauma, subconscious programming, and identity shape leadership, money, and visibility, and why traditional growth strategies often fail capable, driven people. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Farya. I'm so happy to have you here.
Hello, Deborah. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so excited to be speaking with you today.
Yes, and you're joining us all the way from London, so it's
I
a little
am
bit later
indeed.
in your day. Beautiful. And the topic that you proposed is really close to my heart because a couple years ago, I wrote about the secret shame that women entrepreneurs feel when they make this transition from being at the top of their game to being a beginner all over again and feeling that overwhelm. And I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I'm doing. What is it that you are seeing and with this identity shift when people leave corporate? And I believe you work with men as well as women. Is that
I do.
true?
Yes, I do.
And I'll be really curious too to know whether the identity challenges are similar or different between genders. So share with us a little bit about what you see and the types of people you work with.
So, yes, I mean, I work with high achievers and high performers, business owners or professionals. And I work with them to, if they want to, let's say, scale the business or they want to shift from corporate to leadership to becoming a business owner. So essentially what it is that they would have had some kind of success already, but either they want to expand and something gets in a way. And the people that I work with usually would have um, gone through, the traditional maybe business coaching or, the traditional even mindsets work and everything, and they still feel that something is blocking them, not because it's nothing to do with them not knowing a strategy, because as you know, right, like information is so accessible these days, right? So I feel that a lot of people get to that invisible barriers and they attribute that to, okay, well, maybe I don't know the ins and outs of the business. And while some of it might be true, it's usually not that, right? And then what they find, and what I find very difficult, and that's why I'm so passionate about this work, is when people come to that conclusion that maybe this is just not for me, or maybe I'm just not good at entrepreneurship. And actually women come to that conclusion way quicker than men because I think historically and intergenerationally we have been taught to sort of in a way keep ourselves a little bit smaller, right? So it doesn't come naturally for us. It comes with a lot more effort, I find, for women to really put themselves out there. And I think that working in corporate sometimes creates a little bit of a safety for some people, because in corporate, if you want to succeed, it's usually the success is based on a structure and potentially performance, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
yes,
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, corporate was made for women who don't feel quite worthy enough. and it, gives us the opportunity to try harder and harder and harder so that we can get the rewards, the accolades, the bonuses that fill our sense of self-worth, right? Because culturally women are worth less in general.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, we are, as women, we are a lot, um, we are very good at kind of hustling, burning ourselves out in some ways. Because if you think about it, traditionally, even, I work with a lot of women entrepreneurs, and I sometimes come away thinking, oh my God, they are superhuman because and also, in if you work in corporate, it's the same because you have to manage so much there, and then you have to come and manage home, right? For the most
Yeah,
part.
the second
So
shift.
yeah, so we are very much, we are probably the best candidate for leadership in corporate. And they love that because we perform, we give, as much as we can. But the problem is that success is entrepreneurship does not come from performance or that structure. In fact, it comes from that internal leadership. And in corporate, we're not trained. They don't train us to make that internal leadership stronger because everything has to, essentially there's a hierarchy, right? And everything comes from a structure. So then what sometimes happens is that people move from corporate, and they are very much at the top of the games, and when they come to entrepreneurship, it requires visibility on a different level. Now it's about them. It's not, they can't hide behind a structure. They can't hide behind, and it's great, but it's just that, we're not necessarily trained in that way. Having said that, what I find is that a lot of the qualities that made you successful in a corporate to begin with would be the backbone and the foundation of your success in entrepreneurship. It's just that that internal capacity needs to change a little bit. That really is it.
A
Otherwise,
little.
very much so.
Very much so, right? Yeah.
Yes, I just want to like stress that it's not it has nothing to do with competence.
Right.
That's the thing, because that's already there. That already got you the success that that you wanted in a corporate or whatever, or you got as
Right.
far as, you wanted to. And you chose to move to entrepreneurship for whatever reason. Usually it's because in my experience, they are high performers and high achievers, and they can deliver. So they think, okay, I'm going to just set up my own business because something is not satisfactory in that,
Mhm.
uh, um, in the corporate world as such. And then what they don't realize is that you are the same competent, amazing, capable person. You are the same person. It's just that their structure has changed, and you're not trained yet for, let's say, your nervous system, your mindset, and your identity to catch up with the fact that you are the leader here. You are
Yeah.
the face and the foundation, a backbone, everything of your business.
Yeah.
And that sometimes throws people a little bit, and it makes them a bit unsettled, but it's
Of course,
nothing that cannot
because
be.
all the scaffolding is removed.
Yes.
Right? So everything that holds you up in corporate, where you have a team, you have a title, you have usually a hefty paycheck, and you've worked hard for that. You've climbed the ladder. You feel validated by that. And once you remove all of that, then it's what's left. And you mentioned competence, right? So these women are highly competent, and then what comes up, what I notice in the women I work with is confidence is the first thing that they'll say, well, I don't feel confident anymore. Right. And so there's competence, there's confidence, and then there's also courage. And what I want to say is really self worth. Right.
Mhm.
So there's self worth, and then there's confidence. And they're
Yes.
two separate things because confidence comes from doing things that you've never done before. but self-worth is inherent in who you are. Can you talk a little bit about that, especially in the light of trauma? I'm super interested in, how you use the term trauma, what you mean by that, and how that plays in this scenario.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the good news is that, the confidence is there and it's just being transferred from one role to the next. The only thing that's really missing in this situation is that at in corporate you are given permission to go ahead and do this, go ahead and sell this, and even with ridiculous pricing, you have no problem to go and negotiate. I had a client actually that was doing amazingly well at sales in corporate, and she was selling kind of as I said, working with ridiculous amounts, and then comes in and she has to sell her services, and then her system was completely dysregulated because that internal permission was not there, and she relied so much on that external validation and external permission that comes very well at times from the corporate world. Now, linking, and you're absolutely right, the confidence is separate from self worth. Now, this is why I became so fascinated in this area, because by training, I'm a psychologist and I've, worked as a psychologist for many years. I still do. But then what I've noticed was precisely that the unprocessed trauma amongst high achievers is usually rewarded rather than being recognized and worked with. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of high achievers, myself included, and
Mhm.
I imagine anybody who is listening, me, yourself, everybody, because we are high achievers, we are high performers. And what happens usually is that we're not born being high achievers. And actually, a lot of our desires to become high achievers is not coming from a place of desire and dreaming big. It comes from a place of the identity that we took on very early on,
Yeah.
right? And I always say, trauma, when people hear the word trauma, they get, especially high achievers, again, in my experience, they're like, nope, I don't have any trauma. And I always say, you need to look at your trauma as in some ways as a gift, because it has given you the resilience, the ability to read the room before anybody else. So I would say, I mean, this is what I talk about a lot in my podcast as well, that your trauma is the reason why you have come this far. You
Yes.
haven't come this far despite of it. It's because of it. However, at some point, there would be a glitch because you can't move more forward, or you can't expand, or you can't, create a business of your own authentically with the trauma responses. So you have to work with it
Yeah.
rather than going against it, because that's how burnout happens. And when I talk about, trauma, what I mean is anytime that you had to um, in a way, the younger, you had to abandon herself in order to feel wanted, accepted, even loved, even if that's not true, even if that's how we understood it at a young age.
Yes.
So I say that because it's important to know this has nothing to do with you being, growing up in a traumatic environment or with neglected parents. It could be our own interpretation. Sometimes our parents would have been busy working, or they're not
Mhm.
as emotionally available, whatever it might be. So we would have learned early on to be responsible, more responsible, to be more to be able to read other people's emotions before they even say anything, or to have more resilience, right? These are the
Yeah.
things that would work amazingly well for us in our adult life, especially in corporate world, because it gets constantly rewarded. If you
Yeah.
burn yourself out, you're rewarded for it. If you are dysregulating yourself in order to achieve something, you're rewarded. If you're constantly performing to the point of exhaustion, and at the cost of your relationship and your family life and everything else, you're rewarded.
Yeah.
So this is how trauma gets played out. And then when people move to entrepreneurship, What is required is now you have to become visible for everything. Your That sense of self-worth is not being fed by performance. It's not being fed by overdoing things, right? So that's why people get a little bit, not a little bit actually, people get very um, uh, they become disorganized in their nervous system, to say the least.
Yeah.
And then they kind of want to bring the same pattern that saw them be successful in corporate to entrepreneurship, and it just simply does not work like that.
It doesn't work. And also, you mentioned blocks before, and I want to talk about blocks. And thank you for defining trauma for us, because I know people don't think, well, I had a great childhood, I wasn't traumatized. And it's not about that type of trauma. It's not about being beaten or emotionally abused. These are micro traumas that
Mhm.
inform how we show up in the world. And before you mentioned blocks, and to me, blocks are very interesting. And I'm always thinking about, well, where does a block come from, right? And then what are the manifestations of a block? So I see some people hiding behind getting another credential, right? So
Mhm.
the fear of visibility or fear of being judged or whatever the fear is keeps them chasing the next thing that makes them feel more valid. And I always look on LinkedIn, and anytime I see someone who has multiple initials after their name, like a string of initials, all their credentials, to
Yeah.
me it says, oh, that person is doesn't feel safe or doesn't feel valued just by being themselves.
Absolutely, because in the blocks, as they don't it's interesting because a lot of the times they don't come up unless you are entering entrepreneurship, a certain kinds of blocks I'm
Mhm.
talking about.
Well, what's a block? Let's define a block.
Okay, so these are, so anything, any invisible force that pushes you back from, so in from moving forward and achieving what you want, anything that you can't really name. So for example, you may know, like, okay, these are the things I need to do to set up my business, and when it comes to that, to actually doing it, you will procrastinate. These are the things that people use, the name, the kind of vocabulary they use. Oh, I'm procrastinating, or I'm just I don't want to be visible because I don't want to like judged in some ways, if they have some awareness.
Mhm.
Or they say things like, I don't feel confident enough. These are these things, what we are, the invisible blocks has nothing to do with that, right? It has absolutely nothing to do with procrastination. In fact, procrastination is a safety mechanism, right? So when the blocks happen when your nervous system feels that doing an act or stepping forward feels threatening for your nervous system, right? And the reason for that is because your nervous system would have experienced something similar way back, right? And your body remembers even if your mind doesn't. So a
Mhm.
lot of the times things, I mean, I can't even tell you with my, with my own clients, sometimes things from so far back comes up that they just thought, oh my God, I never even thought about that, or I'd completely forgotten about it. I had a client who had difficulty with sales, right? And every time, she was great at, when she was in a in a job, she was great at that part. She had no problem being visible. And now somehow when she had to talk about selling, just felt heavy. She was like, and then as we started kind of talking about the programming behind what it means for her, what selling means, even though she never had any experience of that, but in her environment where she grew up, we soon realized that they associated selling with being sleazy, or they
Mm.
had a member of a family who she grew up hearing about how he is greedy, and so she unconsciously associated selling with being pushy and everything else. So this would be part of her programming. So now if she has to go out there and sell her, services, which is a very sort of relational process, it's supposed to be a relational process, all the programming gets in a way. She's not aware of it, but her nervous system pulls her back, saying, no, no, this is, you're going to be judged. Because remember, how everybody talked about so and so in your family? And this is all happening on an unconscious level. But then she finds herself not confident. Her energy is not there. Even when she does go to a client and talks about her product, it doesn't land. They could say the same, two people could say the same thing and sell the same thing with the same price. One will come away with clients and the other one won't. Nothing to do
Mhm.
with the strategy or the script, or it's to do with the energy and your nervous
Yeah.
system, how open it is. So when I'm talking about block, sorry, I went off. When I say block, what I mean is any hidden programming that has trained your nervous system that entering that, whatever that may be, selling,
Mhm.
being more visible, having a voice, taking up space, all the things, then that our nervous system will pull back. Now, add that to our collective and intergenerational trauma pattern around visibility as women. I mean, around visibility, having your voice, I mean, that's universal. So we would have that on top of our own individual programming. So you see, we always, I always say, we have to work a lot harder in reprogramming our own inner architecture than men, because a lot of these programmings don't exist for them. So it
That's
makes it
right, that's
easier.
right. I mean, they were, conditioned from childhood to take charge, to be heard, to compete, to be out front, and,
And they were never punished for taking up space. They were never punished
that's
for,
right.
historically, women were punished for taking up space, for speaking up, for asking for money, right? Even to this day, sometimes I even hear, we're talking about now, right now, and we're still here.
Mhm.
I'm still hearing, oh, so and so is very successful, made a successful business, but shame, she's not married. It's as if it has to come at the cost of, that's linked. If you're super successful and if you're, taking up a lot of space, then you might compromise, you being in a relationship.
Yeah,
I
and
hear
that's
that even today.
the cultural conditioning too. So there's so many layers to the conditioning. I mean, when you were talking, I was remembering when I was 5 years old and I was on a children's television show and I was painfully shy, painfully shy. No idea why my teacher and my mother thought this was a good idea for me because it was very traumatizing. And I was so nervous, I fell flat on my face when we were running around doing some physical exercise. And that experience unconsciously has played out in my entrepreneurship by this feeling when I first got started of it's not safe to be seen. It's not safe to be on camera. And what is what is entrepreneurship now? It's all about being seen. It's all about being on camera and being up front. So that one, really smacked me in the face early on and it's been 13 years, but that was one of the things that I had to unwind because, visibility is currency. It's money in the bank and if you can't be visible, then you're in trouble. So, how do you work with clients in kind of identifying and unraveling these hidden unconscious traumas so that they can be more available to the opportunities that's in front of them, whether it's visibility, sales, or something else?
Yes, so you absolutely, because visibility also has many different layers. It's not only just about kind of standing in front of the camera. Some people are great at that, but when it comes to becoming visible, so for example, if they have to be visible talking about um, a service that they are, how transformational their service is, that's when the glitch comes. So they don't always identify it as a visibility issue, right? Because I have, I work with in my group work, in my group program, the method, I actually work with people that do not come through the door because they have visibility issues. They come through because they say, somehow the sale is not selling, or somehow, I'm not where I want to be. right? So we don't always kind of come up with visibility in that form, because visibility is, it's about, you being your authentic self, essentially. And not only that, then trying to convince others to buy into that, so that purchase, not, it's not a product. We are offering our services as part of who we are, right? So then we have to be visible on every front, not just on camera. We have to become visible with clients, even when we are putting ourselves out there and, talking on podcasts, talking about, so one of the first things that we do when we are kind of thinking about visibility as such, because that's the, as you correctly identified, that's one of the most important pillar of entrepreneurship, is I kind of start to um, go through a process of identifying, firstly, what visibility means to them, secondly, what they observed about visibility growing up, right? What did it mean to them? Not just to them, but what did they observe in their surrounding? Who was visible in their surrounding, and how was that person received by others if it's not them themselves? Then I encourage them to start thinking about every encounter, big encounters they had with visibility, right? Anything big that resulted in reward or resulted in, like in your case, feeling shame or scared,
Yeah,
or
shame.
all of that.
Yeah.
So when that all comes up, that's the first layer that we have to, because a lot of the times, again, the problem happens because we try to solve the wrong problem, right? People try to look at what's happening in their cells. Do I not have this technique in sales? Do I not know how to speak about do I have my right niche, and all of that,
Yeah,
all
there must be
important.
something wrong with me.
Yes, and these are all important, but I have no doubt that, especially your audience now listening, working in corporate, you know, you've got this, right? You've got the talent, you've got the ability, you've got all the things, and you will learn the strategy if you haven't done so already. The thing that's you need to look at and identify is exactly the hidden kind of invisible internal barriers.
Yes.
And do not call it procrastination, do not call it
Imposter
laziness, or
syndrome.
yes, imposter syndrome, because these are, yes, they are names, but they don't really mean anything.
Mm,
You need to, and then you identify with that, and that's another problem, because if you
yes,
identify with being having imposter syndrome, then where can you go from that? Then again, you're looking at the wrong, so you look for the wrong solution, or you look
exactly.
to, with laziness, what I see a lot is, when people talk about, oh, I know that I need to go and record this or whatever for my, for on social media or for my program or whatever. But every time I come to it, they don't even recognize at times that it's a visibility issue. They say, then I have other things to do and something comes up. Maybe I'm just being lazy. And then when they look at it that way, the solution would be to put more effort in, right?
Mm,
That is the opposite of what we want. We
yeah.
don't want more effort. We need more capacity,
Yes.
internal capacity, internal safety. That's what we need. We don't need more work. You've already done all the work, and you are already hardworking. And that's why you managed to survive as long as you did in a corporate world. So the issue is not at all the hard work or ability. The issue is internal capacity and
I
internal.
love that word. Farya, I love that word. Capacity is actually my word for this year. Because at every level, you're focused on increasing capacity, whether that's capacity to receive, capacity to ask for more, capacity to see yourself in a bigger light. So it's almost like what you've mentioned are all these like glitches. I keep thinking there's a glitch in the program, and making this transition requires reprogramming the unconscious mind so that you can show up And I hate to say, as you truly are, but it really is as you truly are. I mean, we weren't born into this world with self-conscious beliefs about what we'll do right or wrong. We were born into this world saying, "Hello world, here we are. Let's figure out what the lay of the land is." And then we were conditioned very early on on what's safe, what's not safe, and we're on this constant quest for safety.
I love
And
that you said that. I absolutely love it because, on obviously on paper, all the things that I said I'm doing and everything, but really and truly, when somebody asks me on a deeper level, what do you do? I'm like, what I do is kind of removing the programming and removing all the stuff that doesn't belong to us, so that the person can go back to their inner magic, to their
inner
gift,
magic.
because they already, it's not, we're not sitting here creating that magic. I never claim to create anything for anyone, but the only thing I do is remove the unnecessary, programming and stuff that we carry that for the most part don't even belong to us, right?
Absolutely.
So I love that you said about kind of going back. And also, for your listeners, I would go as far as saying that if you have thought about entrepreneurship, it didn't come by accident. It's something that it is part of your process, part of your mission, part of your purpose in life. And ideas don't just come to us, and they don't stay long enough for us to struggle with achieving it or not. So if you are in that place, and if you are thinking about it, or if you are in that process, just know that it is, you are on the path that, it didn't come by accident. So do not get disheartened by the process. It's something that there are things that can be done. And comparing to the things that these people have gone through and all the hard work they've done, I always say, honestly, I know it feels like a big thing, but it is a lot easier than what you have already done and what you've gone through.
Yeah.
So that's what I hope that people can take something away from that, because I'm very passionate about
Yes.
people kind of tapping into their magic. Because especially, I mean, I work with men and women, but I will be a little bit biased here, especially with women, because they do the hardest work,
Yes.
and they have to overcome so many obstacles. And I would hate for them to kind of start labeling themselves and not see the full picture, just because they just simply were not trained in that way, or their success definition is not is I call it trauma-led success versus reparative success, right?
Yeah.
So, in corporate, we operate from a trauma-led success. In entrepreneurship, if you want to not be burnt out, or not compromise and show up and grow and all of that, it has to come from reparative success, which
Yes.
is moving away from the trauma-led.
We are so aligned, Faria. I've loved this conversation, and I'm sure our listeners have too. Um, how do people follow you, get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the method or work with you? What is the best path for them to take?
Absolutely. I mean, come and say hello on Instagram. Mine is faryabarlas.psychologist. And you can always email me on hello@faryabarlas.com, or check out my programs on faryabarlas.com. It's
And your
very
podcast,
straightforward. Huh?
and your podcast.
Oh gosh, yes, I forgot my podcast. And yes, if this conversation is of any interest to you, obviously I go in much more depth and details. And feel free to give my podcast a lesson. It's called "From Trauma to CEO," and you can find it on Apple, Spotify. And I would love to hear, your feedbacks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. That's it for now, my friends. And remember, entrepreneurship is not about skill set alone. In fact, it's much less about skill set and much more about who you are becoming, how you're showing up. Confidence is earned, confidence comes from doing. Self worth is where we need to get to, that kernel of self value that is impenetrable by outside forces. And that's where the key to sales, visibility, and everything you want is. And we look forward to seeing you next week on Life After Corporate. Until then, be well, go out there and be you.